Hi, I'm Greg Kahn. I'm going to demo to you what we have thus far in our commitment system as of May 24th, 2019. So without further ado, let me click on our commitment site. It's going to bring up our login screen. Let me log in with my user ID and password. So I'm logged in as a super admin. So if you have super admin or admin rights, you're going to be able to see these two links here. Our display letter flag referencing our prefix and user IDs, which is going to help us create our prefix for our commitment numbers, and then we can assign them to users. So let me click on our prefix one first. It's going to bring up this interface. So if it's color-coded, and if you can see these edit icons, that means you can edit those fields. So I can click here. Here's our display flag value. Over here is our prefix for our commitment numbers and our title. So once you have that, we can assign them to users. So I can click on our display flag referencing our user IDs. Again, if it's color-coded or if you see these edit icons, that means you can edit those fields. So if I click here, here's our drop-down with our display flag values coming from our display flag prefix table. And if you want to assign them to users, you can click here. Here's our users and user IDs coming from our system users table. And the reason why we have drop-downs is for integrity's sake. So now let's look at our commitments. So I'll click on our commitment list. Here's our commitments. And we froze the first two columns here, so if we scroll right, you can always see the commitment numbers in our flyout menus. So if I scroll to the very far right, here's our delete buttons. This is how we can delete commitments or a commitment. Let's delete a commitment. It's going to ask for confirmation. Are you sure? Yes, I am. So I'll click OK. One thing you have to remember is to save your changes. So you have to click here. It says delete successful. So all these commitment fields can have various edit controls. For example, the comment field, if I click here, it has a text area. I can enlarge this like so. If the headers are color-coded light green, it's going to bring up drop-downs. So I can only select from the items here for integrity's sake. And for headers that are color-coded yellow, they're for free-form fields. It's going to have combo boxes, meaning that I can select from items here, or I can put anything I want. I can clear this guy, and it's autocomplete. If I press P, it's going to find pass-through. If I select that, it's going to get it. And remember to save your changes, save successful. And one thing to note about the freeform fields is that prior to this commitment list being launched, the system takes the unique, in this case, nickname fields from our commitment table and puts it into a dedicated table, a dedicated nickname table. So that's how we're able to get these items here. And for our drop-downs here, they're coming from a list of drop-down tables. So let's click on the first one here. So here's one of our drop-down tables. So let's add an item. I'll add a new record. I'll click, let's just type in test and save our changes. So the system automatically generates the display flag and prefix. And it knows that because when you log in with your user ID. So your display flag references your user ID and your prefix here. So now let's go back to our commitment list. This was for department. So under department, we should see our test item that we just created. So I'll click on here. Remember to save your changes. So if I go back to the department list, it's alphabetized, so test is in the bottom. So let's delete this guy. Are you sure? It's asking for confirmation. I'll click OK. Remember to save your changes, delete successful. I'll go back to the commitment list. And now it's blank. So anytime you make a change in the drop-down table, it's going to be reflected in your commitment table. So now let's put back if it yes fast. And remember to save your changes. Go back to the department list. And let's just make changes to fast. Let's put a couple of exclamation marks for this example. Save the changes. So if I go back to the commitment list, you're going to see the exclamation mark. So anytime you make a change in the drop-down table, it's going to be reflected in your commitment table as well. So it probably doesn't make sense to have your exclamation mark. So let's go back here. Let's get rid of it. Save changes. And if I come back, it should no longer see the exclamation marks. So yeah. So over here we have our flyout menus, edit and attachments. Let's click on edit. This is another way you can edit your commitment. So there's a bunch of edit controls. One thing to note for blanket, if it's yes, that means done is enabled. You can make changes here. But if it's no, if blanket is no, this becomes disabled. So in order to make changes here, you have to click yes, and you can make changes here. You can also have children. A commitment number can have children, so have a bunch of children. Let's just put 2. So what that means is that your parent commitment number 3 will have 3A and B if I save this guy, but I'll just do that. So now your parent 3 has 3A and B. It has children. So commitment number can have children. So what else? You have attachments. So attachments, you can get to our attachment interface by clicking here in our menu here, or if you see an attachment here, this is 5 attachments. I can click here as well, and it's going to go to our attachment interface. Notice that these edit and delete is only on 2 records here, my own attachments. You can only edit and delete your own attachments. Here's my user ID. You cannot edit and delete someone else's attachments, another user's ID attachment. You cannot delete theirs, only your own. And to launch an attachment, all you have to do is click on it. And this is a test. This happens to be an image file, but more than likely you're going to have something like a Word document, a PDF, an Excel file, or maybe PowerPoint. So let's get rid of this guy. And you can also have drag and drop sorting. So if I click here, this is pretty slick. I can move, let's say, Fishing Ocean Beach. I'll put it on top. Make Perch. I'll put it at the bottom. Make this second. So you have drag and drop sorting, which is really slick. Let's go back to the commitment list. And so here we have B stands for blanket. So if this is lit, and the reason why we just have B here is just to save real estate. If this is lit, that means you can edit the done field. But if you don't see a light bulb here, you can't edit it. So if I click here, nothing happens. The only way you can edit this is if you make this true. Now I can edit this. I can take this out. So remember to save your changes. Save successful. So what else? So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover here. The grid control has a lot of cool features. I mean, you can do your typical sorting. If I click here, it's ascending order, descending order, or the way it was. You have your filter icon here. And yeah, so if you filter on something, you can save your grid state, meaning you can click here to save your grid state, meaning that if I move off this page and come back, it's going to remember your filtered grid state. And if you want all your records back, all you have to do is click on Reset Grid State. And for check filter, it means that if you filter on a bunch of items here, on fields here, you can click Check Filter. It's going to give you a list of what you filtered on. And so let's focus on importing commitments. So there's 2 ways you can import commitments. You can import nil commitment numbers, or nil commitments rather, and the system will generate nil commitment numbers for you. Or you can import existing commitment numbers. So let's select nil commitment numbers. So I have a sample here. I'll click here. It's going to bring in an Excel file. And this is going to be our nil commitment numbers. And the system's going to generate these nil commitment numbers for us. It's going to generate these nil guys. So we froze the headers and we froze the first column. So we froze the headers. So if you scroll down, you can always see the headers. And if you have existing commitment numbers, if you import existing commitment numbers, you can always, if you scroll right, you'll always be able to see those commitment numbers. But these are for nil commitment numbers. The system's going to generate these nil commitment numbers. So notice these dashes here. And the reason for these dashes is that it cannot be blank. Because if you were to save it to your database, records can become misaligned. So you have to have something there. So the system will add dashes to any blank fields for you. And another thing to note is that for point person, when you import it to this spreadsheet component, it replaces the commas with semicolons. It's usually last name, comma, first name. But when you import it here, it's going to replace the commas with semicolon. That's because if you were to save it to the database, what the system does, it does all these this parsing processing that delimits fields by commas. So you don't want to interfere with the parsing processing. But once it's done, once it's finished, then the system replaces the semicolons back to commas. So now let's just save it to our database. So notice you have an error log here. So that means that if you have any errors, meaning that when you're in Excel and you enter something incorrectly, it's going to tell you. So how does it know? So for the time field, it checks the time drop-down table. And if there's no match, that means you entered it incorrectly. So here are incorrect entries. And you can easily correct that by clicking here, correct data from error log. And you can change it here. Like it says Miller time, maybe you meant to say ongoing, don't know, which was entered incorrectly. You might have meant to say limited. And if you don't correct something like point person, and you save this in the commitment table, it's just going to leave this blank in the commitment table. It's just going to save what you made changes to here, what you corrected here. So if I go to the commitment list, what was that, under time, and I scroll right, so see, it made the changes ongoing and limited here. And notice it left it blank because I didn't correct that on the error log grid. But I can correct it here as well. So let's just put, how about Maria? And I'll save the changes, say successful. And the second way you would import an Excel commitments is to import existing commitment numbers. So for example, you would probably do something like filtering. You would probably filter on, you would have thousands of records, hundreds of records, and you would want to get a subset. You would probably filter on something. For example, you would probably, anything that contains, let's say, RAP, just for this example. And when I click on filter, you won't see RMS because it's filtering on anything with RAP. So then you would probably click on export to Excel all fields. You would export that into an Excel file, make corrections in Excel, and then import it back to our commitment system. So yeah, so import commitments. I have a sample here, a small sample, just to save time. So I'll click here. It's going to bring up this Excel file with 3 existing commitment numbers. And it's very efficient too because it knows the number of rows you have in Excel. So it has 3 rows, and I made it add an additional 5 rows just as a cushion in case you insert a record or so. Insert records. So it's very memory efficient. So yeah, again, first column is frozen, so you can always see the commitment number, and header is frozen, so if there was a lot of records, you can always see the headers. Again, you can save it to our database. Here it gives you error log. You can easily correct it, and you can make changes, you can correct them, and the ones you don't correct, it's just going to leave it blank when you save it to our commitment table. And it's just going to only save the ones you corrected here. So go back to our commitment list. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover here. So one thing I wanted to talk about briefly is I just recently added a Tableau Dashboard. So I can click here, and it's going to bring up a Tableau Dashboard here, which is pretty slick. So this has Tableau JavaScript API event listeners, meaning that, let's do some changes. Up to 2032, let's just make it up to 2019, so you can do stuff like that. You have a bunch of filters. I can select items using the JavaScript API event listeners. I can, for example, select this, hold down the control key, select more items here. Let's just select 4. So anytime I select an item, fiscal year, these are fiscal years, and these are your allocations. You'll see it over here. And I can post this. I can drill down, post selected fiscal years, and it's going to post it over here. So yeah, so that's pretty cool. So that just shows you we can use the API event listers to select items and drill down. So yeah, so that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.